Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and you've learned a lot over the past couple of weeks. So what I wanted to do is go ahead and just review everything that we've talked about. I've got some assignments and different activities that we're going to do, and hopefully this is going to make all of that stuff that we've been talking about stick in your head a little bit better. So feel free, if your teacher wants you to, you can team up with a partner on this and just work through some of these problems. And if you can do this stuff, I think y'all should be good to go for the test for this unit. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and hop into it. So here's what I want us to do first. What we talked about at the very beginning of this unit was something called levels of organization. So you see all of these different words on your screen. What I want you to do is go ahead and write them out on a piece of paper, and then I want you to number them from 1 to the last number on which ones are the smallest, and then you're going to work your way up to the largest ones, okay? So go ahead, teacher, you might want to pause the video, give them just a minute or two to work on this, and then we'll review it when y'all get back. All right, I know y'all had no problem doing this one, but just in case anyone was a little bit confused, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it with y'all up here on the board. So again, these are levels of organization. We want to start off at the smallest and work our way up until we get to the largest one. So out of our options up here, what is the smallest unit? We're going to put that as number 1. Well, y'all might remember that the atom is actually the smallest one up here on the board. The atom is the smallest, okay? So I'm going to put a number 1 right there to the side, okay. All right, so atoms are going to come together. What do we call that when atoms come together? Well, this is going to be called a molecule. All right, so next to the word molecule, I'm going to put the number 2. An example of a molecule is a water molecule. You know what the chemical equation for water is. It's H2O, so that's 3 atoms put together. Okay? Our next level of organization is going to be a word that sounds very similar to this. Instead of molecule, we're talking about a macromolecule. That's going to be our next level of organization, okay? Remember that that prefix macro just means large. So this is a large molecule. Instead of 3 to 10 atoms big, it can be hundreds of atoms large, all right? So after macromolecule, what's our next level of organization? That's going to be the organelle. Does anyone remember what organelle means? It literally means little organ. And these are little organs that, instead of your body, are actually inside of cells. And that brings us to our next level of organization. Organelles come together to make a cell. So cell is going to be our next number. I'm going to put a 5 next to it, okay? So cells is our next level. Sometimes cells like to team up and work together. What do we call that when similar cells come together to do a similar function? That's called a tissue. And the tissue is going to be our next level of organization. I'm going to write it out here to the side for us. I don't see it on my board. So tissue is going to be our next level of organization. So sorry about that. All right, so then after tissues, what's going to be our next level of organization? Well, when tissues come together, they make an organ. So organ is going to be our next level. All right? Okay, so your stomach is an organ. It's got a couple of different tissues inside of it. The outside is muscle, the inside is glandular epithelial tissue. Well, when you get a couple of organs together, you make something called an organ system. And so that's going to be our next level of organization. It's called an organ system. This could be your digestive organ system, your nervous organ system. When we put all of those together, we're going to make something called an organism. And an organism is you, your cat, your dog, your mom, your dad. They're all organisms. An organism is a living thing. Okay, great job, y'all. Hopefully y'all were able to figure those out. I kind of threw you a curveball there with the tissue, but y'all are pretty smart. I'm sure y'all figured it out just fine. So I've got a couple more review things I wanted to do with y'all. All right, let's see what we got here next. So, all right, here's what's going on. I've got 3 questions and I've got a little word bank there for you, okay? We were just talking about these. Instead of writing the whole question out, feel free to just number your board or piece of paper 1, 2, 3, and I want to see if y'all can come up with the right word for this. So why don't y'all take a second, talk to a neighbor, and see what y'all can come up with, okay? All right, let's check those answers. Let's see what y'all came up with. So number 1 says, when similar cells come together to do a similar job, you get a what? That's right, a similar cell is doing a similar job. This is going to be called a tissue. I just like to think of tissues as a team of cells, okay? Number 2 says these are small specialized structures inside of cells like the nucleus and the mitochondria. Well, the nucleus and mitochondria, those are examples of what? Those are examples of organelles. So that was the answer for this one, organelles. Great job. All right, number 3 says the stomach has muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, and glandular tissue all working together. The stomach must be well, I see here it's a type of tissue, What do you call something that has multiple tissues coming together? That's called an organ. So number 3 is going to be an organ. Great job. Thanks so much for working on those. I got a couple more for y'all. If this is making sense to you, then that's a great sign that you know what's going on. If you're really struggling with these, that might be a hint to you that you might want to put in some study time on your own. So let's look at the next one. All right. So these don't have specific answers. You can really use almost anything we've talked about in class to answer these. But I do have a challenge for you. What you're doing here, I have got 4 questions. Your job is to tell me why that thing would not be considered alive by scientific standards. Now what I want you to do is try to use any characteristics only one time. So y'all might remember there's 6 things that all living things share. They're made out of cells, they all grow, they all reproduce, they all use energy, they all maintain homeostasis. So pick any of those things and try to pick out why these objects would not be considered alive, but try to only use any of those characteristics one time, okay? So take a second, team up with a neighbor, let's see what y'all can come up with, and whenever everybody's ready, come back and unpause the video and we'll see what y'all came up with, okay? All right, so let's check these out. We've got rock, battery, cloud, and fire. Why are these things not considered alive? Well, like I said, you could really use any of those 6 characteristics. So none of these 4 things have cells. Rocks, batteries, clouds, and fires are not made up of cells. So that's one reason that none of these things would be considered alive. Okay, let's go through and see if we can find some other examples on these. Okay, so number 1, why is a rock not considered a living thing? Well, it's not made out of cells, it does not maintain its homeostasis, and it doesn't use energy. So any of those 3 are going to be just fine for this. Let's go to the next one. Number 2 says, why is a battery not considered a living thing? So a battery, like I said earlier, it's not made out of cells, so you could definitely use that. It doesn't grow, it doesn't reproduce, it doesn't maintain homeostasis, but I think it does use energy in a certain way. So I don't know if I would, say that one for batteries, but it's not made out of cells, they don't grow, and they don't reproduce. So those are 3 reasons why batteries are not considered alive. All right, let's go to the next one. Number 3, why is a cloud not considered living? Well, clouds aren't made out of cells. They do grow, so I don't think we could put that on here. They kind of use energy. They use heat energy in order to grow, so I don't know if that one would work either. But they don't reproduce, really. You see multiple clouds all the time, but they're not making more clouds. So for this one, we might just want to say they're not made out of cells. All right, number 4, why is fire not considered living? Well, it's not made out of cells. I know I've mentioned that a couple times. But fire, it does grow. It does use energy. It doesn't maintain homeostasis, though, so that's something that you could use. So, like I said, all of these answers are kind of open-ended, but I really wanted us just to work with those 6 different characteristics of life. So whatever you put on these is probably fine. Great work. All right, the next one I have here, we're going to talk about scientists and what they contributed to the cell theory. So here's what's going on. I've got 4 questions for you, and I've got a word bank up there up top. We talked about these scientists a while ago, so y'all feel free to team up with a neighbor. Y'all see what you can remember about these, and when you are ready to check your answers, come back and unpause the video, and we'll see what you came up with. All right, so number 1 says, this person concluded that all animals are made out of cells. Does anyone remember who that one was? Well, this was a scientist named Schwann. Does anyone remember how you can remember that? I don't know about you, but Schwann sounds a lot like a different animal I've heard of before. Kind of sounds like the word swan, right? Swan is an animal. Well, that's one way that I remember that Schwann was the guy who figured out that all animals are made out of cells. Okay, the next one, number 2, this person concluded that all plants are made out of cells. Who of these figured out that all plants are made out of cells? This was Schleiden. So I'm going to write his name up here. I don't have a whole lot of room. Schleiden figured out that all plants are made out of cells. He's a botanist, and so he was studying plants a lot. All right, number 3 says, this person concluded that cells arise from pre-existing cells. Who said that? Well, this guy, Virchow, had a really famous line that was basically just that. He said that all cells come from pre-existing cells. So, Virchow was the one who discovered that for us. And then the last one, number 4, this person was the first to see cells. By process of elimination, we can figure out that that was Hooke. But I did tell you a way to remember that. Remember, Hooke took a look. And what did he see? He saw cells. So Hooke was the first person to see cells. He was specifically looking at cork. All right, I'm going to erase that. I got a couple more review questions for y'all. Okay, for this, what we're trying to do is I have 8 characteristics. And what I want you to do, you can just number your board or piece of paper 1 through 8, and I want you to tell me if that characteristic is more of a eukaryotic thing or a prokaryotic thing. It's been a while since we talked about this, so I'm going to leave y'all a little bit of a hint, okay? I've got this cool poster over here that's talking about prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. When we have that on the board, y'all feel free to pause the video, and you can kind of use that as a cheat sheet to figure out these 8 characteristics, okay? When you're ready for the answers, just come back and unpause the video. All right, let's see what everybody came up with. All right, so number 1 says smaller and simpler. Which of those types of cells are smaller and simpler? Well, y'all might remember that those are the prokaryotic cells, okay? Prokaryotic cells, they're very old, they're very simple, okay? Number 2 says it contains a nucleus. Which of these 2 cells contain a nucleus? Well, I hope y'all remember that one way to remember this is to say pro means no. So prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus, no nucleus. So which ones contain a nucleus? That's the eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic. Great. Number 3 says contains membrane-bound organelles. Which one contains membrane-bound organelles? That one is eukaryotic. Great. All right, number 4. Which of these, eukaryotic or prokaryotic, which ones would plant and animal cells fall into? Plant and animal cells are both eukaryotic. And one thing I want you to remember, my biology teacher told me this 15 years ago, and I never forgot it. You are a eukaryotic cell, okay? You are eukaryotic. Here's the next one, 5, bacteria. Well, bacteria is the only example of prokaryotic cells, so we got to put that here. Okay, when it comes to prokaryotic versus eukaryotic, bacteria is the only example. If you ever get a question asking what type of cell is bacteria, it's always prokaryotic. Number 6, does not contain a nucleus. Let's remember that pro means no, no nucleus. So prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. Great, just a couple more of these. Okay, so human cells. Human cells. What'd y'all get for that one? That's right, you are eukaryotic. So let's put that here. All right, and then my last one, DNA is circular. That's kind of tricky. Well, this one is prokaryotic. Remember, they've got their DNA just floating out there in the cytoplasm. Their circular DNA is called a plasmid. And it's not really protected like the eukaryotic cells are. Remember, we keep our DNA inside of the nucleus, kind of locked away from everything. Prokaryotic cells don't really care about that. They're just kind of floating out there inside of the cell. Okay, y'all are doing great. Again, if y'all are answering all of these questions, you're ready. I mean, you're going to want to study a little bit, but you know what's going on. If you're trying to answer these questions and you don't know any of them, take a hint that you might need to look over this a little bit on your own time, and that's okay. All right, so here's our next one. Kind of very similar. We were just comparing prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. Now we're looking at animal cells versus plant cells. In just the same way, I've got a little poster board that y'all can use as kind of a cheat sheet. So when we get this up here, I got plant cells on the left, animal cells on the right. This is a great time to pause the video, and you can kind of use that as a cheat sheet when y'all are working on these. When you're ready for the answers, just come on back, and we'll see what y'all came up with. All right, let's see what y'all came up with. So number 1 says, shaped like a rectangle or a square. Y'all might remember that the plant cells are the ones that always have that geometric shape. All right, number 2 says lysosomes are present. Which one has lysosomes? Well, that's the animal cell. Remember, lysosomes are kind of the garbage disposal of the cell. They clean the cell up. All right, 3 says centrioles are present. Which one of these two has centrioles? Well, that's going to be the animal cells. Okay, here's our next one. 4 contains chloroplasts. Plant or animal cells? Which ones have chloroplasts? That's the plant cell. Remember, chloroplasts are used to do photosynthesis. That's how plants get their food and energy, okay? Number 5 says has a cell wall. Which one has a cell wall? That's the plant cell again. It helps support the cell. All right, 6 says has one large central vacuole. Which of these two has the large central vacuole? That's the plant cell. Okay? 7 says has a less defined shape. Okay, well, the plant cell is the one that's always square or rectangular or has a very geometric shape to it. The animal cells are less defined. They kind of have a lot of different shapes depending on what the cell's doing. And then the last one here, 8, has many small vacuoles. Well, the plant cell has the large central vacuole, and animal cells have many small vacuoles, so animal here. All right, y'all are doing great. I've just got one more slide. I hope this is making sense to y'all, and let's see what y'all can come up with on this next one. So over the past couple days, we've been talking about, and y'all have been working with, making these comparisons between cells and a city or a town or a circus or a school or whatever you're interested in. And so I just wanted to reiterate that a little bit more. What's going on here? On the left, I've got 10 things inside of a city, and on the right, I have 10 organelles. It's your job to find which two are the most similar and to match them up, okay? If you can do this, then that's going to help you remember what all the different functions of these organelles are. So again, let's get that little cheat sheet up on the board for you. I've got my animal and plant cells over here. When we get that on the board, y'all feel free to give the video a pause, and that'll be something great to look at while y'all are trying to figure out these matches. All right, let's see what everybody came up with. If y'all can do these, then you're in good shape and you should be good to go. All right, so on the left, let's start with number 1. It says the town hall. Which of these is kind of like the town hall? Well, to me, I think that's a lot like the nucleus. So I'm going to put the letter E right there. Okay, the nucleus is a lot like the town hall. It kind of directs what the city is doing, right? The nucleus directs the cell and decides what the cell's doing. Number 2 says the city border. Which organelle is a lot like the city border? I think this is the cell membrane. Remember, the cell membrane is kind of the border of a cell, and it decides what comes into and out of the cell. The city border is doing the same thing. Okay, the next one, number 3, says garbage men. Which of these over here is going to be like a garbage man? Okay, to me, remember that the lysosomes are in charge of cleaning out the cell. And so garbage men kind of help keep our city clean. Lysosomes kind of help keep our cells clean. So I think the garbage men are a lot like a lysosome. All right, the next one is a factory. Well, what does a factory do? A factory makes something. What up here is in charge of making something? That's right, it's the ribosome. The ribosome makes proteins, and factory makes all sorts of different things. Okay, let's do the next one. Number 5 says highways. Which of these are kind of like a highway? Well, remember that the endoplasmic reticulum is the transporter of the cell. If you got to get around the cell, you take the endoplasmic reticulum, and that makes it a lot like the highway in a city. All right, number 6 says a post office. Well, a post office is in charge of processing and packaging up any boxes or letters that you have to send. So which organelle kind of does something similar? Well, the Golgi apparatus, letter I, remember that it processes and packages proteins, just like a post office packages and processes letters. All right, the next one, number 7, says the mayor. Which of these organelles is kind of like the mayor? Well, the mayor would be inside of the town hall, right? What is something that is inside of the nucleus? Well, the nucleolus is inside of the nucleus, the same way the mayor may be inside of the town hall. All right, number 8 is the solar panels. Solar panels use energy from the sun and turn it into energy that we can use. What organelle does something similar to that? I'm thinking the chloroplast for this, so let's put a big letter C next to that one. Chloroplasts work a lot like solar panels do. All right, the next one, number 9, says the power plant. The power plant is in charge of making all the electricity for the city. Which organelle is in charge of making all the energy for the cell? That's the mitochondria. Great job. All right, and then the last one here, number 10, is the water tank. This is like a place to store the water until we're ready to use it. Which organelle has a similar function to that? Well, I think it's a lot like the vacuole, letter J. All right, y'all. So we've learned so much over the past couple of units. I hope this was helpful for y'all remembering some of that stuff. You've got a couple more assignments to work on and maybe a test at the end, but y'all hang in there. Y'all keep working hard. This stuff is hard for everybody, okay? And you're not going to learn it if you don't give it your best effort. So make sure to give it 100%, and I hope you have a great day.